Most security cameras record what happens in front of them. But one camera recorded something that wasn't supposed to be there. In 2019, a small apartment building installed a new security system after several tenants complained about strange noises in the hallways at night. The cameras were placed on every floor, covering stairwells, elevators, and hallways. For the first few weeks, nothing unusual appeared in the recordings. Then one night, at 3:12 a.m., the third-floor hallway camera activated, even though the motion sensor detected nothing. The footage showed a quiet hallway. Every apartment door was closed. The lights flickered once, then returned to normal. At first, nothing seemed strange. But when the security manager reviewed the footage frame by frame, he noticed something disturbing. Camera angle slowly changed, but just lightly. It was now pointing directly at apartment 312. The footage continued for several minutes. Then, the door 12 slowly opened and no out. But a shadow appeared on the wall across the hallway. The shadow moved, as if someone stepped into the corridor, the strange part. The hallway itself was empty. The shadow stopped in front of the camera for a moment. Then the camera glitched. When the image returned, the shadow was gone. But something else had changed. The camera lens now had fingerprints on it. The building manager checked the apartment records the next morning. Apartment 312 had been vacant for 3 years. It was the middle of the graveyard shift at the old county hospital, a time when the silence of the corridors feels almost heavy with the weight of the past. Mark, a veteran security guard with a weary face, sat slumped in the flickering gloom of the monitoring station. His only companions were the hum of old machines and stale coffee. The West Wing had been a graveyard of abandoned dreams since the early 2000s. It was a dusty maze of peeling wallpaper and rusted gurneys that the living were told to avoid. At exactly 2:48 a.m., the heavy silence was broken. A red light on the old control panel began to blink, signaling motion in a wing that had been sealed for decades. Markline Dundascan lines. From the shadows at the edge of the frame, a figure emerged, a nurse in a vintage white uniform, walking with a stiff, unnatural gait. His breath hitched as he stared at the screen. The wing was double-locked and empty. There was no way anyone could be walking those halls tonight. On the feed, she moved past the dark doorways of empty patient rooms with unnerving slowness. She never looked up, never acknowledged the camera watching her every move. She reached the end of the hallway, a dead end, where a solid brick wall had been built years ago. Without hesitation, she stopped and slowly turned her body toward the bricks. Suddenly, the monitor erupted in a violent wave of static and glitches. When the picture finally cleared a second later, the hallway was empty once again. Gripping his heavy flashlight, Mark ventured into the wing himself. The beam cut through the thick dust, but the corridor was as empty as a grave. Trembling, he returned to the security room to verify what he had seen. He hit the manual rewind, the mechanical whirring of the VCR loud in the small room. He played the tape back in slow motion. As the nurse passed directly under a bright overhead security light, the terrifying truth became clear. There was no shadow. The realization hit him like ice in his veins. She wasn't just a trespasser. She wasn't alive. There, is a specific kind of silence that only exists in the deepest part of the night. It is a weight that presses against your eardrums, making every creak of the house sound like a footstep. I never used to believe in the stories people told about the witching hour. To me, 3:33 was just a time when the world was asleep. But then I checked the footage from the basement. It started with a simple notification on my phone. My security app claimed normal status all evening until the exact second the clock struck that cursed number. Motion detected. Something was moving in the dark. When I opened the live feed, everything looked still. The storage shelves, the old holiday decorations, nothing moved. Yet, the recording light on the physical camera was blinking a frantic, steady red. Then I saw it. Or rather, I heard the sound of wood scraping against concrete. A heavy wooden chair, sitting alone in the center of the floor, began to slide. Not a nudge, but a deliberate, slow pull. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was the house settling or perhaps a draft from the vents. I went down there, checking the seals and the ceiling, desperate for a logical explanation that didn't involve the impossible. But logic failed me when night returned. I watched the screen again, my heart hammering against my ribs. At 3:33, the air in the basement seemed to thicken, and that's when I saw the shape. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the basement door. Premier ad hoc no. I threw the door open and swept the beam across the room, illuminating every corner, every shadow, every forgotten box. There was nothing. The basement was as empty and silent as a tomb. I felt like a fool, standing there in my pajamas, shivering in the damp air while my phone continued to ping with motion alerts. I went back upstairs and looked at the recorded footage. My blood turned to ice. Onze screen the shenigheiding. It was gliding directly toward the camera, growing larger and more solid with every step. Then, for a single, sickening frame, the shadow vanished, replaced by something far worse. A face, pale and distorted, stared back at me with eyes that weren't eyes at all, but hollow pits of despair. When morning came, I went down one last time. I found the camera had been physically moved. It was turned completely around, facing the blank, cracked concrete of the back wall. Someone, or something, had touched it. I checked the final playback from that morning. Even though the lens was facing the solid wall, the screen didn't show concrete. It showed that same distorted face, staring directly into the lens. Staring directly at me. Some things are better left in the dark. Because once you see what's waiting at 3:33, it never really stops looking back.